We spend a lot of time analyzing successful leaders, looking for habits to copy. But studying only the winners creates a survivorship bias. It masks the actual root causes of institutional collapse. To see the leadership blind spots that matter, we have to look at the people who drove their organizations off a cliff. When facing high-stakes pressure, decision-makers rarely fail because they are purely incompetent. They fail because they default to one of three extreme behavioral traps when the margin for error disappears. We are using a selection of the most disastrous U.S. presidencies to audit these failures. These administrations provide a clear look at how specific management styles break down when the stakes are at their highest. Understanding these historical anti-patterns is a way to recognize our own default responses under stress and prevent personal flaws from scaling into organizational disasters. This matrix tracks the central trade-off every leader faces during a crisis: the friction between taking swift action and maintaining the structural integrity of the system they lead. In the bottom right is passive harm. This is the rigid ideologue, a leader who sticks to established rules and processes even as the system burns down around them. In the top left is active harm. This is the paranoid visionary. They break the system to force a rapid solution, often creating more damage than the original crisis. In the bottom left is negligent harm, the zone of the naive delegator. This leader hands off their authority to avoid the effort of governing or to protect their own comfort. Under stress, most of us gravitate toward one of these three zones. By looking at the historical prototypes for each, we can see exactly where the breakdown begins. The rigid ideologue relies exclusively on protocol or outside institutions to solve emergencies. Our prototypes for this failure are James Buchanan and Herbert Hoover. In 1857, as the nation moved towards civil war, James Buchanan refused to act against secession. He argued that while leaving the Union was illegal, the federal government had no authority to stop it. He waited for the Supreme Court to fix the issue, effectively abdicating his role as a leader to a third-party process. Buchanan maintained his strict legal code, but the cost was absolute. By the time he left office, 7 states had seceded, and federal forts were seized, making a bloody conflict inevitable. Herbert Hoover followed a similar path. He was a self-made millionaire with a brilliant resume, but when the Great Depression hit, he froze. He believed government intervention would violate capitalist principles, so he refused to adapt his worldview to the new reality. While he waited for private charities to handle the crisis, banks collapsed and businesses shuttered. National unemployment eventually reached 25%. The ultimate failure of this rigidity came in 1932, when the Bonus Army, thousands of World War I veterans, marched on Washington to ask for early payment of their promised bonuses. Hoover viewed the protest as a violation of order. He sent in the U.S. Army with tanks and tear gas to clear their camp. The rigid ideologue preserves their personal sense of purity, but sacrifices the organization to do it. When a system is breaking, following the rules exactly as written can be the most dangerous thing a leader can do. The paranoid visionary takes the opposite approach, using a crisis to push unilateral structural changes while crushing any internal dissent. Our prototypes are Woodrow Wilson and George W. Bush. Woodrow Wilson led the U.S. through World War I, but he used wartime tension to suppress his critics. He signed the Espionage and Sedition Acts, making it a crime to criticize the government. Under his administration, over 2,000 Americans were prosecuted for exercising basic free speech. Wilson's obsession with his vision for the League of Nations blinded him to political reality at home. The U.S. Senate rejected the plan, leaving him sidelined. Meanwhile, his punitive Treaty of Versailles sowed the economic and social bitterness that helped lead to World War II. Decades later, George W. Bush reacted to the tragedy of 9/11 by expanding executive power. He prioritized rapid, aggressive action over verified data, passing the Patriot Act to expand federal surveillance. This drive for a visionary fix led to the trillion-dollar invasion of Iraq based on flawed intelligence. Bush opted for a swift, aggressive strike rather than a strategy built on verified information. This focus on foreign intervention left the administration unprepared for domestic disaster. When Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, the federal response was slow and inefficient, leaving thousands of citizens stranded in a flooded city. The paranoid visionary often achieves a sense of short-term control, but by prioritizing their personal vision over systemic checks, They hollow out civil liberties and destroy long-term trust in the institution. The final trap is the naive delegator, where a leader prioritizes their personal comfort or public image over actual oversight. Our examples are Warren G. Harding, Franklin Pierce, and William Henry Harrison. William Henry Harrison serves as the ultimate warning for the ego-driven leader. To prove his energy, he delivered a 2-hour inauguration speech in the freezing rain without a coat. He spent more time writing the speech than he did being president, dying of illness just 31 days later. Warren G. Harding was a more destructive example. He famously admitted he was unfit for the office, campaigning on a return to normalcy that really meant avoiding the hard work of leadership. Harding stacked his cabinet with his Ohio gang poker buddies, while he spent his days golfing and drinking during Prohibition. He delegated almost everything to his friends without any system of accountability. This hands-off approach allowed for massive corruption. Millions meant for wounded veterans were embezzled, and the Teapot Dome scandal revealed that federal oil reserves were being traded for private bribes. Franklin Pierce took a similar path by backing fraudulent local governments in Kansas to avoid a federal confrontation over slavery. By trying to delegate the problem away, he invited a 5-year bloodbath that pushed the nation toward civil war. As these cases show, outsourcing authority without verification creates a vacuum. It invites the kind of internal corruption that can dismantle an organization before the leader even realizes the depth of the rot. Identifying these patterns is only useful if we can map them to our own decisions. Consider how you typically react when an unexpected crisis hits your desk. If your instinct is to wait for more data and strictly follow protocol, you share the traits of a process-driven manager. Your primary risk is the kind of ideological paralysis seen with Buchanan and Hoover. To counter this, you need a circuit breaker. You must decide in advance on a specific metric that, if hit, gives you the permission you need to break protocol and intervene. If your instinct is to immediately take charge and force a solution, you are a visionary leader. Your risk is the ego-driven overreach that defined Wilson and Bush. Your guardrail is friction. You must actively protect and listen to the dissenting voices on your team to ensure your rapid fixes don't create long-term debt. If your instinct is to hand the problem off to an expert so you can stay at a high level, your risk is the negligent abdication seen in the Harding administration. For those who delegate, the rule is verification. You have to establish mandatory periodic audits of the people you empower. You can hand off the tasks, but you can never hand off the ultimate responsibility for the outcome. Historical failure is rarely about a lack of intelligence. It is almost always about a mismatch between a leader's preferred style and the actual reality of the problem in front of them. Longevity doesn't come from leaning into natural strengths alone. It requires building the same kind of structural guardrails we see in history, protecting the organization from the leader's own instinct to fail.